Important because you're going to learn about the clause. Hello everyone, welcome to your chapter 2 class. So in this chapter, 27 questions of the state exam are going to appear from this chapter only. So not only is this chapter really important to pass your state exam, it's also really important because you're going to learn about the clauses that you have to include in your contracts. You know, a lot of contractors, once they obtain their license, they kind of revert back to what they already know. And that's kind of an error because some of them don't actually do contracts. You know, some of them just give estimate forms or invoice forms, which are not contracts. You're going to learn what clauses you have to include in your contracts and what actually makes up a valid legal binding contract in the state of California. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to be on chapter 2, page 1, where it says contracts, and we're going to focus on that very last paragraph. Let's go ahead and read it. A voidable contract is valid and enforceable on its face, but may be set aside or rejected by the injured or wronged party. For example, contracts obtained through duress, fraud, menace, undue influence, or mistakes are all contracts that may be voided by the injured party. So one thing I want you guys to take away from that paragraph is who may cancel a contract. It would always be the wronged or injured party, or basically the victim. So for example, in what situation can a contractor cancel the contract? If they obtain that contract because the client was threatening them, had a gun to their head, you know, that would be situations where the contractor can actually cancel it. Or, for example, if the client committed fraud in some sort of way, stated that they were the homeowner, they were not the homeowner, maybe they were just a renter, they're basically lying to you to do certain portions of the work on a property they didn't even own, you guys can cancel that contract if they're committing fraud. Now, in what situation can a client cancel the contract? A client may cancel the contract in the event that the contractor commits fraud, or if they're unlicensed. So what I want you to take away from that very last paragraph is always who may cancel the contract: the wronged or injured party or the victim. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move forward to chapter 2, page 2. And basically everything on this page is really important. We're going to go ahead and detail everything out right now. Let's go ahead and highlight every bullet point and let's go ahead and discuss. Now, it's important to know that these are not the only bullet points that will pertain to your contracts. We're also going to see that on page 7. So highlight every bullet point and we'll continue with those bullet points on page 7. So it says, include a description of the work to be done, the materials to be used, and equipment to be used or installed. Now, I'm going to give you guys an example of a contract where you're going to put that information. But a basic rule to follow: include a description of the work to be done. Try to include as many details as possible, materials you will be installing, and if you have to rent heavy equipment or machines, you're gonna detail that out in the detailed portion of that contract. Second bullet point: review the contract and any plans and specifications line by line with the owner. This is really important. What they want you guys to do is minimize any type of miscommunication and minimize any potential problems with your client. This is why it's extremely important for the contractor to explain the contract to the client. Don't just tell the client, sign here. Explain what they're signing. That's going to help the client understand what type of work they're getting, and that's going to help minimize any issues in the future. Third bullet point: discuss change orders with the owner at the pre-construction meeting and make sure to put all changes to the contract in writing. There will be some situations where changes must happen. This can happen because, you know, the plans maybe weren't approved all the way, or the client changes something in the contract either mid through the project, during the project. A change order must happen. The change order is just to ensure that both parties are in agreement to that change order, and if the price is going to increase or decrease, that has to be written on paper. The next bullet point: many construction contracts will include a disclaimer stating the contractor is not responsible for delays caused by weather, earthquakes, floods, or other acts of God after the time estimate or completion date stated in the contract. Now, this is going to help you in a huge way, especially in commercial projects. In commercial projects, they're much more strict about you completing the project on time due to, let's say, a marketing budget. I always give this example. Let's say once you grow your business, you have 10, 20, 30 years of experience. Let's say you get a pretty big contract to construct a new shopping center. Let's say a Walmart is part of that shopping center. Walmart is, putting a bunch of ads out. Hey, we're going to be open by September 1st. September 1st, we're going to open at this Walmart. Let's say you get delayed in the project and now Walmart has to push back that opening date to September 10th or October 1st. They're not going to let that marketing budget that they had, spending possibly millions of dollars in ads, they're not going to be okay with just losing that money. So they're going to try to find a way to recoup that money, maybe from the contractor, because you did not finish the contract as stated. Now, if you cannot finish the contract based on any of these reasons, you're not going to be responsible. You yourself cannot control the weather, you cannot control earthquakes, you cannot control other acts of God. You definitely want to include this in all of your contracts because this is going to protect you and your company. Because once you sign a completion date and you don't have this clause to protect you, it is possible that they can sue you. And if you're a solo owner, which means everything's under your name, good luck to you. You have to make sure that you include this to protect yourself and your company. The next bullet point. A personal guarantee or similar clause may be used in contracts with renters, lessees, or others who request work but do not own the property. Do not assume the owner will be responsible for payment. A simple statement such as the agent is liable for final payment will require the person who signs the contract to be personally responsible for the payment. So let's say, for example, you're dealing with a renter. Your contract is with the renter only, not with the owner of the property. So in most cases, mechanics liens will be off the table. Now we'll discuss that in the following chapter. But that does not mean you cannot take the renter to court. So if the renter decides not to pay you, still you can sue them in court as long as there's a contract between you and the renter. Make sure it's signed by both parties, and we're going to discuss how to protect yourself later on in this chapter. Be sure to include all notices required by law. So this is an important one, right? This is where a lot of contractors refuse to actually do valid contracts, right? Some contractors tell me this is the contract that I'm using, and it's not a contract, it's an estimate form or an invoice form. Guys, those are not contracts, right? An invoice is a receipt of payment. An estimate is exactly what the word means, an estimate. There's no legal clauses there. You are just providing them with an estimate, a rough amount of what that project might cost them. It's not even the final price. So we're going to learn what is a valid contract in this chapter. Pay attention to the details. Both the contractor and client must sign and date the contract. That should be obvious, right? Both parties have to sign the contract in order for it to be valid. So if the contractor signs it, the client never signed it, it's not a valid contract. The first paragraph under the last bullet point. Under California law, if a contractor includes a provision for private arbitration in a printed contract for work on residential property with 4 or fewer units, it must be set out in at least 10-point Roman boldface type or contrasting red print in at least 8-point boldface type. Please highlight that sentence. We discussed what arbitration was in chapter 1, which is basically like a court inside of the CSLB. There's going to be an arbitrator, which is a judge. They're going to hear your side. They're going to hear the client's side. You want to present any evidence that can help you win the case. But like I said, they're going to try to find a solution that is best for both of you. Now, what this is stating is if you're going to include a clause for arbitration in your contracts, this is the minimum size of the letters. You can't have it so small that the client can't read it. That's the minimum size of the letters. And we're going to get an example of this a little later on. The next paragraph. When a contract includes a complete agreement clause, the contractor and owner are bound by the exact words of the contract. This is an important clause to include in your contracts. Why? What happens as days, weeks, and months go by? In your head, and it's standard human nature, you start changing the information in your head or you start adding information, right? It happens here all the time. There's clients that say, well, you promised me this for free or at a discount. When you look at the contract and you try to detail it as best as you can There's clients that as the weeks go by, months go by, they start changing that information in the head. So it's important to tell them to reference back to the contract. Everything that we agreed upon is on the contract. There was no discounts. There was no promises for more work, free or at a discount. Always reference back to the contract. Next paragraph. A contractor who has his or her license suspended or revoked 2 or more times within an 8-year period must disclose such information before entering into a contract to perform work on residential property. Okay, so this is an important one as well. Basically, it's saying if you had your license suspended or revoked 2 or more times within an 8-year period, every single time you're going to enter into an agreement, a contract with a client, you have to notify them that you got your license suspended or revoked. A lot of clients will not be comfortable with you. So, rule of thumb, don't get your license suspended or revoked, okay? Follow the laws and you never have to worry about this. But you have to know that if you've had your license suspended or revoked 2 or more times within an 8-year period, now you have to disclose this information to your client. And in the last paragraph, I want you to highlight the last 2 sentences where it says, generally, any typed or handwritten changes made to a pre-printed contract will be enforced over the pre-printed statements. You may wish to have an attorney review your prepared contracts before they are signed. Now, this is important because why? Some people decide to make their own contracts or even make their own rules. Like I said, invoices and estimate forms are not contracts. If you purchase contracts from here, from us, our contracts are valid in the state of California. We've included all the clauses that this book is telling you. But you are definitely free to make your own contracts. Now, what we do suggest is that you make sure you added all the clauses that this book is telling you. And before you start printing out numerous copies of that contract that you will be using, take it to a lawyer, make sure they review it. If they give you the okay, this is an okay contract, then yes, make all your copies. Now on page 3, prime construction contract. I want you guys to put right here, residential, commercial, and public. You guys can use this contract to build new properties, residential, commercial, and public. Now we're not going to really learn too much about this contract. It's very simple. They're just giving you an example of it. But at the top of this page, you want to put residential, commercial, and public. Chapter 2, page 5, where it says home improvement contracts. Now, in the very first paragraph, I want you to highlight that paragraph in full, where it says, in California, a written contract is required for all home improvement projects over $500. A home improvement contract and any changes made to the contract must be in writing, legible, easy to understand, and inform the consumer of his or her rights to cancel or rescind the contract. Now, I'm going to give you guys an example of this contract as we go along. I'm going to give you guys a perfect one. I'm going to put it up on the screen. I'm going to zoom in for you guys so you guys can see everything that I'm talking about. But for now, highlight that paragraph in full. Now, in the second paragraph, go ahead and highlight that first sentence where it says, home improvement means repairing, remodeling, altering, converting, modernizing, or adding to residential property. You guys, pretty much anyone that does residential projects will use the home improvement contract. So if you're an electrician, a plumber, a roofer, landscaping, painters, if you're doing work on an existing residential property, you're using the home improvement contract. I get so many questions still to this day. Hey, Luis, I'm a electrician. I do a lot of residential work. What contract do I use? Think back to chapter 2. What contract were we talking about? The home improvement contract. Hey, Luis, I'm a floorer, right? I install new floors. What contract do I use? Think back to chapter 2. What did we say? If it's any type of project in an existing residential property, you're using the home improvement contract. There's only one particular trade that has its own contract, and that would be the swimming pool contract. If you're a swimming pool contractor, you do have its own contract. Other than that, everybody's using the home improvement contract, okay? This will apply to 99% of you. Now, we're going to be on the last 2 paragraphs on page 5, under where it says home improvement salesperson. We're going to go ahead and read that. Now, a home improvement salesperson is a person employed by a licensed contractor to solicit, sell, negotiate, or sign contracts under which home improvements may be performed, a swimming pool constructed, or home improvement goods or services installed or furnished. A home improvement salesperson must be registered with the Contractor State License Board if he or she solicits or sells home improvement contracts, regardless of their dollar amount, outside the contractor's normal place of business, including sales by telephone. Salespersons who only sell home improvement contracts, goods, or negotiate contracts at a fixed business establishment where goods or services are exhibited or offered for sale are not considered home improvement salesperson. It is a misdemeanor for any person to act as a home improvement salesperson in California without having a current and valid home improvement salesperson registration issued by the registrar. Like an active contractor's license, a salesperson registration expires 2 years from the last day of the month in which it was issued. So there's a lot to unpack here, and let's go ahead and really explain what a home improvement salesperson is. First and foremost, what I want you guys to understand is, when do you want to hire a salesperson? And it kind of all comes down on the personality of the contractor. You know, there's contractors that have been working for years, 10, 20, 30 years, and have a lot of references, so they're always busy. And more than likely, those type of contractors don't have to hire a salesperson because they already have so many jobs. They're already really, really busy. Now, there's some other contractors that say, hey, Luis, I get a pretty good amount of jobs, but there's certain times throughout the year where I have nothing. Now, what I always kind of see and recommend is a personality of a contractor and what they're willing to learn. If they're willing to learn sales, then that's a good thing, because that means they're teachable. I can teach them how to do a little bit of marketing. I can teach them, what ways to make sure that you're busy year round. Now, if the personality of the contractor is, they come to the school for the very first time, never even knew them, never even met them, and they're just like this, all mad for no reason. And like, this is the first time I'm meeting you, and this is how you're treating someone that you never even met. I don't even really want to see your personality when you're speaking to a client, right? Because if the personality is a little bit, comes off a little disrespectful, I can kind of see why they're maybe not closing as many contracts as they should. Because when it comes to obtaining projects, whether we like it or not, your sales skills really have to shine. You have to be personable. You have to be nice. You have to be liked in order for you to be able to close a client, especially if your prices are higher than other contractors. That's a complaint that I receive all the time. I'm always getting constantly underbid. How can I make sure that even though my bid's higher, how can I make sure I'm getting those projects? Number one, you have to be branded. You have to have a good brand. And number two, you have to be a good salesperson. Let's say that's not your personality at all. Hire a salesperson. Hire someone that can go door to door for you closing these projects. Hire a good salesperson, someone that's personable, somebody that has a good personality, someone that can connect with clients in maybe a way that you can't, right? So now that we got all that out of the way, when you should probably hire a salesperson, let's talk about what information will be on the state exam. Number one, a home improvement salesperson must first register with the Contractor State License Board. So before you can actually hire a salesperson, you have to make sure that they are registered with the CSLB. Now, you can help them with the paperwork. You can come to the school. We can help you guys out with that paperwork if you're going to hire a salesperson. But the salesperson has to register with the CSLB. The registration must be renewed every 2 years, just like the contractors. That doesn't change, right? A contractor has to renew their license every 2 years. A salesperson must renew their registration every 2 years. They may represent unlimited contractors. So the salesperson will get a salesperson's number just like the license number, right? It's not a license to do the work. It is just a registration number to sell. Now, they don't have to only represent you. They can represent unlimited amount of contractors. They can represent 2 businesses, 5 businesses, 10 businesses. There's no limit to the amount of representation. There's no GED or high school diploma required, so there's no educational requirements. If they solicit or sell contracts outside the contractor's normal place of business, they must register. Now, here's sometimes in which people get confused. Because if you have an office and you're just allowing clients to come into the office to sign contracts, then that person that's working inside of your office does not actually have to register. When they're moving outside of the office, when they're going door to door, knocking, when they're trying to close projects over the phone, those are examples in which they have to register. So I'm gonna go ahead and explain that again. If you have an assistant, a secretary, for example, that is just working in a fixed location, let's call it your office, they're waiting for clients to come in, sign the contracts inside the office, they don't have to register as salespeople. If your assistant is going door to door, knocking on people's door, trying to close contracts, at that point they have to register as a salesperson. Or even if they're trying to close sales by telephone or by email. So basically, if the client is not inside of the office signing the contract and they're closing contracts by phone, by email, or door-to-door knocking outside of your office, they have to register as a salesperson. Chapter 2, page 6. And we're going to be on the very first paragraph. Go ahead and highlight that paragraph in full, and we're going to go ahead and read it, where it says, contractors must notify the CSLB in writing before employing a registered home improvement salesperson. So if you are going to hire a salesperson, you yourself as a contractor have to write a letter to the CSLB stating what contractor salesperson is going to represent you. So what salesperson, what the registration number, who is representing you and your company in these projects. Salespersons are not allowed to receive compensation from anyone other than the contractor with whom they are registered. So a client cannot tip the salesperson. A client cannot pay the salesperson any type of money. The only type of money a salesperson can receive is from the contractor directly. A contractor must also notify the CSLB in writing when a registered home improvement salesperson ceases to be employed by the contractor. Now, this is really important because if you do not do this step and the salesperson goes out and is still signing contracts under your name, you can be held liable. So you have to notify the CSLB when you are going to, let's say, fire or lay off this salesperson. This notification must be submitted within 90 days after the home improvement salesperson ceases to be employed by the contractor. So they give you up to 3 months to notify them. On the paper, it does say what was the last day the salesperson worked for you. So even if you send it 30 days after, 45 days after, 60 days after, for example, you can still put the exact date on the paperwork from the last day of employment of that salesperson. The following people are exempt from registering as a home improvement salesperson. The first bullet point: an officer of record of a corporation or a manager, member, or officer of record of a limited liability company. Which means if you're a registered partner in your business, you're the license holder, you have no reason to register as a salesperson. So let's say it's a family business. It's you and your 2 brothers, for example. Your brothers will not have to be registered as salespeople if they're registered partners in the business. Let's say it's you and your dad. Your dad's a partner in the business. Your dad does not have to register as a salesperson. So any partners, registered partners, by written, you've done the paperwork, not just verbally, they do not have to register as salespeople. A general partner listed on the license record of a partnership, again, would not have to be registered. A qualifying individual, the QI, the person that took the exams, does not have to register as a salesperson. A salesperson whose sales are all made through negotiation between parties when the negotiations are initiated by the prospective buyer at or with a general merchandise store that operates from a fixed location. So again, if your clients are coming to your office to sign those contracts, anybody that helps them, let's say an assistant helps them, the secretary helps them, they do not have to register as salespeople because the client is going to a fixed business location, for example, your office, to sign those contracts. And the last bullet point, a bona fide service repair person who is in the employ of a licensed contractor and whose repair or service call is limited to service, repair, or emergency repair initially requested by the buyer of the service. So for example, the service and repair contract, which we are going to learn about in the next few pages, let's say you send an employee to do that service and repair contract. The employee can sign the contract as long as they're using your license, because it's a service and repair contract. Now, if you send an employee to sign a home improvement contract, that would not be valid. You yourself have to do it. But if it's an emergency repair, if it's a service and repair contract, any of your employees can actually sign that contract and do that project, because it's in the request of the client, and it's only a service and repair contract, which cannot exceed $750. And in the last paragraph on page 6, I just want you to highlight that first sentence where it says, a copy of the signed and dated contract must be given to the buyer before work begins. Of course, we have to give all copies to the client before we even start the work. Okay, so now I'm going to show you guys an example of the guidelines your home improvement contract must follow. So for example, at the very top of page 7, it says every home improvement contract must include. So if you guys are doing work on an existing residential property, right, and you're signing the home improvement contract, which means this is not a service and repair, this is the home improvement contract. This is a guideline in which you have to follow. So I'm going to put up an example of the home improvement contract right now as well. And we're going to go through this line by line and explain where this information can be found and why it's important. Now, so let's go ahead and talk about the home improvement contract and the first bullet point. It says the name, address, and license number of the contractor and the name and registration number of any salesperson who solicited or negotiated the contract. So here on the example of the home improvement contract, as you can tell, on the left-hand side is the contractor's information. On the right-hand side is the client's information. So we have to detail this information out in our contract. So this is standard stuff. Apart from that, another good thing that you can do is attach or staple your business card to this contract, because on your business card, you should have all your company's information. You should have the company name, the address, the phone number, your email address, your license number for sure. And that's just another way of providing the client multiple ways to contact you in the event that they have to. The next bullet point, the contract price in dollars and in cents. So for example, here on the home improvement contract, the contract price is in the middle of the page. Contract price, owner agrees to pay contractor total price. So you're going to go ahead and put it here. You know, if the contract is $10,000, $20,000, $50,000, make sure you put that information there. It's in the middle of the page, right above where it says the down payment. A description of the work to be done and materials and equipment to be used or installed. Now, we did discuss that on page 2 of the chapter, but if you reference back to the home improvement contract, there's like a space for a whole paragraph to be put there. Now, if you need additional space, you can attach another paper to this contract, and that would be valid as well. I do recommend, if it's a long project, that you try to detail it out as much as possible. If you need an additional paper, that's fine. Make sure you add that to the contract. If that paragraph is not enough, please add a paper to it. The next one, the amounts of the down payment plus a statement and at least 12-point boldface type. The down payment may not be more than $1,000 or 10% of the contract price, whichever is less. So you guys can see here, in the middle of the page, that is 12-point boldface, which means this clause cannot be so little to where your client can't see it, right? They want the client to see it. The down payment may not exceed $1,000 max or 10% of the contract price, whichever is less, which means if your contract is $50,000, you cannot obtain 10% of $50,000. Why? Because it exceeds $1,000. Okay. Now, for example, if your contract is $1,000, you cannot obtain a $1,000 down payment. In that particular example, 10% would be less. So your down payment would be $100. So this applies to all home improvement contracts, right? On an existing residential property. This does not apply to commercial work. This is for residential properties, residential home improvement contracts. So if you're doing a remodel, for $65,000, $70,000, $80,000, and you're obtaining more than a $1,000 down payment, that is a misdemeanor. That is excessive down payment. Stop doing that. Stop doing the 50% down. That's not legal, you guys. Okay? $1,000 max or 10%, whichever is less is the key. Always, whichever is less. A payment schedule showing the amount of each payment in dollars and in cents. So the schedule of progress payments you can see is right below the down payment on the contract example. Now, what makes a valid payment schedule? The date, when are they going to pay you? How much money are they going to pay you? $1,000, $10,000, $15,000. How much is the payment for? And a description of the work and materials to be installed. Okay? So that is a valid payment schedule. A payment schedule is just not the date and the amount. It's date, amount, what type of work are you doing, what type of materials are you installing. And you see a perfect example of it right here on this contract. Now, I do want to add something in regards to the payment schedule. If you guys want to make a note of it, we will talk about it on the next page. But if there's a joint control involved, there would be no need for a payment schedule. Okay, so if there's a joint control involved, there's no need for a payment schedule. The next bullet point, the approximate dates when the work will begin and substantially completed. So as you can see, again, in the middle of the page, there's an approximate start date and an approximate completion date. You want to be as accurate as possible. Most contracts have something in place where they say that they can finish or start within 30 days of that date. Now that's a clause that protects the contractor more than anything, but I would always say if you're going to be doing a project, you want to try to abide by its terms as much as possible. You want to keep your clients happy as much as possible. You don't want to you want to take your time, make sure that you're putting the most up-to-date, accurate dates on this contract. You want to try to avoid any situation with these clients. So if you're just putting whatever dates without really thinking about it, or really sitting down and thinking about the price and the materials and everything that comes involved in doing a contract proposal, you're not going to be successful in your construction business, and you're going to possibly be faced with lawsuits. Be accurate as possible on those dates. The next bullet point, a notice regarding changes with the heading, notice about extra work and change orders, followed by the following statement. Extra work and change orders become part of the contract once the order is prepared in writing and signed by the parties. So very quick on this notice, a change order or extra work order have to be signed by both parties. If they are not signed by both parties, they're not valid. So if there is going to be a change order or an extra work order, they have to be signed by both parties. Now, you might not see it here, but there is multiple different pages in regards to the contract. I will be putting up examples of it. Also, the last two, where it says a statement regarding whether you carry CGL or workers' comp. Now, this is an issue with some contractors because they tend not to understand these last two bullet points. They're not saying that you have to have this insurance. They are not saying that you have to have the liability insurance. They are not saying that you have to have the workers' comp insurance. What they're saying is you have to tell or advise the client whether or not you carry it. So if you don't carry it, you're gonna mark that you don't carry it. If you do carry it, they want the information of your policy. Now, workers' compensation is required if you have employees. So if you have employees, you need workers' comp. If you don't have employees, you don't need workers' comp. I'm sorry, C39 roofers, you need workers' comp no matter what. Everybody else does not require workers' comp if they don't have employees. Okay, so that's a guideline of what to follow in regards to your contracts, your home improvement contracts. Everything on page 7 is extremely important. Please put a star at the top of this page. Literally, if you look at the back of your book, the practice questions, you're going to get a practice questions for pretty much every single one of these bullet points. So please learn it. Please pay attention to it. Please understand it. If you have to watch this video 5, 10, 15, 20 times, it doesn't matter. It's not a race, you guys. It's how well you're understanding this information. I don't know how many times, I get a call on Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning. Hey, Luis, I already seen the class. Can I get the other one? No, take your time. It's not a race. At the end of the day, it still takes you a minimum of 3 to 4 months to get your license. It's not a race, you guys. Understand this information, okay? The more you see it, the better you're gonna understand it. Because when we give you guys those practice exams and we try to confuse you at the state, they're gonna do the same thing. They're gonna try to confuse you. So it's not how fast you can see this video. It's how well you're understanding the information, okay? So we're gonna move forward to page 8. So we're still continuing with the bullet points. Let's go ahead and focus on that second bullet point though. And I do want you to highlight the first 2 sentences in the second bullet point. Let's go ahead and read it. It says, a mechanic's lien warning explaining the state lien laws and the rights and responsibilities of an owner and a contractor. It is intended to inform the property owner that the property can be liened if the contractor and other claimants are not paid. So I'm gonna give you guys an example of the mechanic's lien warning here. But what is the mechanic's lien warning? Okay, it's in the name. It is just a warning to the client. If you don't pay me the money that is owed, I can place a mechanic's lien on the property. Okay, so by you giving a mechanic's lien warning does not mean you're already suing them. It does not mean you're already placing the mechanic's lien. It is simply a warning to the client. I'm gonna do my job. I'm gonna do everything that we detailed out in this contract. But if you feel or refuse to pay me, you feel like you're not gonna pay me or you're refusing to pay me, I can and will place a mechanic's lien on this property. If you still refuse to pay me, I'm gonna foreclose this lien. I'm gonna submit the foreclosure lawsuit, and you can possibly lose your property when we go to court, okay? So that's what the mechanic's lien warning is there. The mechanic's lien warning is a protection for you, and it's a warning to the client. So I want you guys to add these 2 bullet points to this page. A mechanic's lien warning is strictly provided by the prime on private works, which means a mechanic's lien warning is not provided by a subcontractor. It is only provided by the prime on private works, which are residential and commercial. And who is the prime contractor? The prime contractor has the contract directly with the client. If you are a subcontractor, you have the contract with another contractor, which means you're not providing this form. Now we're going to discuss that much more in detail on the next page. In the next chapter. The next bullet point I want you guys to add: a mechanic's lien warning must be included in all home improvement, home solicitation, swimming pool, and new construction contracts that are non-public. So I definitely want you guys to add these 2 bullet points on this page. It's basically just the 2 most important things to know in regards to the mechanic's lien warning. Please add those to that page. And then I know I already gave you guys an example of the contract, but I do want to talk about this very quickly. On page 9, as you can see, it's a very small picture of a contract. I know it's a little hard to read, but let's focus on the first paragraph under where it says schedule of progress payments. Here is another clause that I want to discuss where it says the schedule of progress payments must specifically describe each phase of the work, including the type and amount of work or services scheduled to be supplied in each phase, along with the amount of each proposed progress payment. It is against the law for a contractor to collect payment for work not yet completed or for materials not yet delivered. However, a contractor may require a down payment. Guys, it is legal to obtain a deposit. It is legal to obtain a down payment. However, it's $1,000 max or 10%, whichever is less is the key. But it's also illegal to charge for work you haven't done yet. It is illegal to charge for materials that haven't arrived to the property yet. You guys have to follow these clauses because these clauses are law. If you're not following the clauses and for whatever reason you guys go to court or a complaint is submitted against you at the Contractor State License Board, you are risking your license and possible fines. So if you're in the habit of obtaining 50% down or charging materials before they are delivered, you guys gotta stop. You gotta change that attitude. Because if you don't, you are risking much more than your license. You're risking fines misdemeanors on your record, and possible jail time. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move forward. We're on chapter 2, page 16, under where it says joint control. Now, I do want you to highlight this paragraph in full, and we're going to go ahead and read it. A joint control addendum is an agreement that allows a joint control company to act as an escrow agent that manages the distribution of payments and requires contractors to supply lien releases as progress payments are made. Since the control agent releases funds as each phase of the project is completed, a payment schedule may be omitted from the home improvement contract if a joint control addendum is used. The addendum must be signed by the buyer, contractor, and the joint control officer. So I do want you to highlight that paragraph in full. We're going to break it down in just a bit, but go ahead and highlight it. Every single sentence in that paragraph is important. So let's go ahead and break it down. What does a joint control actually do? A joint control controls the distribution of payments in the project. And in the notes, it says a joint control controls the disbursement of construction funds. So they basically control the money in the project. They are a client representative, or the state likes using the term escrow agent. They pay by phases, not by dates. Okay, so let me explain now. Let's say the client owns multiple properties, okay? They don't have time to focus on one particular property. So they might have a joint control to represent them in that project. The reason for that is because instead of you calling the client for a payment, you would contact the joint control. The joint control, as you're done with phases of the project, they would issue you your payment, okay? This is normally done when a client owns multiple properties or lives out of state. Now, it's important to know that multiple people or multiple different types of people can be considered a joint control. Normally, yes, they're banks or lenders or accountants, but it can be pretty much anybody, somebody that works directly for the client. Normally, it is a bank or a lender or an accountant that controls the funds of the project. But like I said, they're a representative of that client. Why does a client hire a joint control? Again, normally a client that owns multiple properties, they don't want to be bothered with one property, right? They hire someone to take control of that. They hire someone that can contact you in regards to those payments when they are necessary, okay? If there's a joint control involved, you do not have to have a payment schedule. So that is also correct. If there's a joint control involved in that project, there's no need to include a payment schedule in the project because a joint control pays by phases of the project, not by dates. So if you're taking a long time to complete a certain phase, you have to realize it's going to take a lot longer for them to pay you that money. The joint control officer, the client, and the contractor must sign the contract. So all three parties have to sign the contract in order for it to be valid. So remember, that's the most important parts of the joint control. We are still on page 16, and we're going to go under where it says violations. I do want you guys to highlight those two paragraphs under where it says violations. Highlight them in full, where it says, a violation of a home improvement contract law can be both a misdemeanor and a cause for disciplinary action. A misdemeanor conviction under these laws may result in a criminal penalty of $100 to $5,000 and or 1 year imprisonment. It is a misdemeanor for a home improvement salesperson to fail to account for or fail to give their employing contractor any payment received in connection with any home improvement transaction or any transaction involving a work of improvement. It is a misdemeanor for a salesperson to use a contract form if it does not disclose the name of the contractor who employs him or her. If a false representation, a lie, is made in a home improvement contract, the buyer may recover up to $500 plus attorney fees plus damages. Okay, so in regards to what we just read, it is basically stating this. It is a misdemeanor for a salesperson to try to collect payment directly from the client without disclosing that information to you. Any payment made from the client to the salesperson has to be given to the contractor. And the reason for this is we just discussed it in the past few pages. The salesperson cannot collect any payment directly from the client to pay their personal salary. The only payment a salesperson can receive is directly from the contractor. So if they're going to get paid for their services, it has to be through the contractor directly. A client cannot offer a tip to a salesperson. A client cannot pay a salesperson directly for their salary. The only payment a salesperson can accept is directly from the contractor that they are representing. A salesperson is not permitted to induce buyers to enter into home improvement contracts by promising them a kickback. So what is a kickback? A salesperson cannot state, hey, sign the contract for $10,000. Once it's signed, once we complete the project, once you pay the full $10,000 in full, we're going to refund you $2,000 under the table. That's a kickback. It's illegal. Can't be done. However, a contractor or salesperson may give a gift to prospective customers for purposes of advertising or sales promotion, as long as the gift does not exceed $5 in value. So for example, if a salesperson is trying to advertise or promote your business, try to get more eyes on the company, try to get more calls, try to get more leads, they can offer a gift card of up to $5. It can be Starbucks, McDonald's, anything like that. But if they're trying to induce customers, trying to get more customers, and they're offering gift cards of $100, kickbacks, these things are illegal and it cannot be done. Okay, you cannot try to bribe your clients to sign these contracts. Any gift that is going to be given cannot exceed $5 in value. If it does exceed $5 in value, that is technically a misdemeanor and it will go on record. So we're going to go ahead and move forward, and we're going to be discussing the home solicitation contract now, which is on page 18. So chapter 2, page 18. So this part of the chapter, a lot of students tend to get confused. So what I really want to do is I'm going to go over page 18 and page 19. I'm going to go over all of the information in regards to the home solicitation. And then once we end on page 20, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a recap of the differences between the home improvement and the home solicitation. That way, we're truly understanding what the differences are between the home improvement contract and the home solicitation contract. Even though there's not big differences, I do want you guys to understand it, and we're going to go over a few updates. So let's go ahead and start on page 18 where it says home solicitation contract. And we're going to highlight in the very first paragraph, we're going to highlight the first two sentences and we're going to read it. Many home improvement contracts are also home solicitation contracts. The home improvement and home solicitation laws are easily confused with each other. So they're very similar, guys. They're very similar contracts, and it's easy to get confused between the home improvement and the home solicitation. Let's go ahead and focus on the last sentence still in the first paragraph. However, it's important to note that if a home improvement contract is made at any place other than the contractor's usual place of business, that normally refers to as an office, all the laws concerned with the home solicitation also apply to that particular home improvement contract as well. So many people understand that when a contract is signed in the contractor's usual place of business, which means an office, a contractor does not necessarily have to offer the 3-day right to cancel. Now, it's important to know that you're not going to receive a question at the state in regards to that. They're not going to try to say, well, if a client signs it at the office, can you rescind the 3 days right to cancel? They're not going to ask you a question about that. The questions that they will really ask you at the state is in regards to the 3-day right to cancel. So for your own knowledge, it's important to know that if a client does sign the contract in your office, you do not have to offer them a 3-day right to cancel. But if you sign that contract anywhere but your office, it will automatically have to be included a 3-day right to cancel, which means if you sign the contract at the client's house, that's not your office. The client will have 3 days to cancel. If you sign it at McDonald's, at Starbucks, that's not your office. You will have 3 days to cancel. Okay? The client will have 3 days to cancel. Okay? You sign that contract, even if it says home improvement at the top. Okay? If you sign a contract that says home improvement at the top, it doesn't have to say home solicitation. If your contract says home improvement at the very top, you take that contract, you sign it at the client's house, what this paragraph is telling you, it will automatically become a home solicitation contract. The second paragraph now, highlight that very first sentence. A home solicitation contract is any contract for the sale, lease, or rental of a wide variety of goods and or services costing more than $25 that is made at a place other than the owner's or seller's normal place of business. Again, that's your office. Highlight the last sentence. This does not apply to service and repair contracts. So if you're going to do a service and repair, which we're going to talk about that later on in the chapter, don't worry about the 3-day right to cancel, because the service and repair contract has its own rules. So there's a home improvement, home solicitation, and a service and repair. We will discuss the service and repair as we go in this chapter, but the service and repair does have its own rules, and it's not input, and it doesn't have really anything to do with the home improvement and the home solicitation. Like I said, at the end of this page, page 20, we'll go ahead and do a recap of what you need to know in regards to the home improvement and the home solicitation. Next paragraph. The buyer's agreement or offer to buy the goods or services involved in a home solicitation contract must be written in the same language in which the sales presentation was given. It must be dated, signed by the buyer, and contain or have attached a 3-day right to cancel. So for example, if you're speaking to your client in English, your contract must be in English. You're speaking to your client in Spanish, your contract must be in Spanish. And of course, we have to include the 3-day right to cancel. The last paragraph. It should be noted that the laws that define home solicitation contracts use the term 3-day right to cancel. In contrast, the laws for home improvement contracts use the term notice of cancellation. So like I stated earlier, although you have the right to not offer the notice of cancellation or the 3 days to cancel in the home improvement, I would always offer your clients 3 days to cancel. I would always offer it. The reason why you always want to do this is because although you have the opportunity to not offer the 3 days to cancel, it will look much better for whatever reason you go to the court. And even though you have proof that the client came into your office and signed the contract, it benefits you in so many more ways to offer a time period in which the client can cancel. Okay. Now, again, if they sign it in your office, you don't have to offer the trial period to cancel, which is the 3 days. You sign it anywhere but your office, automatically becomes a home solicitation, and the client will have 3 days to cancel. Know the difference. Chapter 2, page 19, we're going to be under that box. Let's go ahead and read it. The 3-day right to cancel notice may be attached to the contract if the contract includes an at least 12-point boldface type. So the very box, the big box at the top of page 19, that's an example of the 3-day right to cancel. This has to be included in every single home solicitation contract. And remember, the contract is signed anywhere but your office. You have to include this notice, the 3-day right to cancel. For a home solicitation contract, a business day is defined as any calendar day except for Sunday and the following business holidays. New Year's Day, Washington's birthday, Memorial Day, July 4th, Labor Day, Columbus Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. So this is really important to know because they are going to try to trick you and include one of those holidays within the 3 days. So just to give you guys an example, the day the contract is signed doesn't count. So if the contract is signed on Tuesday, for example, that means the first day is Wednesday. That's the first day. Let's say Christmas is Thursday. You have to skip Thursday, right? So you have Wednesday, Christmas is Thursday, so you skip Thursday, Friday, Saturday to cancel their contract. So the client has 3 days, not including any of these holidays, not including Sundays, to cancel the contract. And the day the contract is signed doesn't count. So you have to think, the contract is signed on a Monday, that means they have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at midnight to cancel that contract. But if there's a holiday somewhere in between the 3 days, make sure you skip the holiday. You cannot count the holiday. And for example, let's just say it's a regular week. Monday the contract is signed, the client has Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at midnight to cancel the contract. Now I'm going to give you guys an example with a holiday. Monday the contract is signed. Tuesday's the first day. Christmas is Wednesday. We have to skip Christmas. Thursday's a day. Friday at midnight they can cancel, right? Because it's 3 days. Tuesday counts. Wednesday does not count because that's Christmas. Thursday counts as the second day. And then Friday would be the third day. And it would expire Friday at midnight. So be careful. Count the days. Skip the holidays. And remember, Sundays don't count. Now let's go ahead and read the last paragraph on page 19. Except in the case of an emergency, the seller of a home solicitation contract must refund any payments to the buyer within 10 days of cancellation. So remember, if they cancel within those 3 days, it does not matter if you ordered materials. It does not matter if you started the work somehow. You have to refund the deposit in full. The buyer, in turn, must return all goods received in the transaction within 20 days. So if materials arrived at the property within the 3 days, you have, as the contractor, 20 days to pick up the materials. Guys, if 20 days pass and you haven't picked up those materials, the client can keep those materials at no additional cost. So you have to pick up the materials within 20 days. The right to cancel does not apply when the buyer requests the services described in the home solicitation contract in an emergency. This is also correct. A client can waive the right to cancel. Now, the only way they can waive the right to cancel is if it's in an emergency. Let's say, for example, they call you, you get to the property, a pipe burst, there's water everywhere. You have to start work right away. They can waive the right to cancel because they're in harm or their property's in harm. However, they cannot just waive the right to cancel because they want to waive it, right? The only way that they can waive their right to cancel is if it's in an emergency, they can harm the property or themselves. And the buyer gives the seller a dated and signed personal statement that describes the emergency and expressly waives the right to cancel the sale within 3 business days. I'm going to go ahead and give you guys an example. I'm going to pull this up right now. That way you guys can see it, you guys can read it. I'm going to give you guys 10 to 15 seconds, and then we're going to move forward to page 20. So now we're going to be on chapter 2, page 20 in the very first paragraph. Let's go ahead and read it. The buyer of a home solicitation contract generally has the right to cancel the transaction until midnight of the 3rd business day after the day of the agreement or offer was signed. So remember, the day the contract was signed does not count. Cancellation takes place when the buyer merely gives written notice to the seller at the address specified in the contract. So all they have to do is send you something in the mail. They can give you something handwritten stating that they want to cancel. It can be given in person, by mail, by fax, or by email. So they can even email you that they want to cancel. If by mail, it becomes effective when it is deposited in the U.S. mail, correctly addressed, with first-class postage applied. So they can just mail you something stating that they want to cancel. This is why it's extremely important to have communication with your client. Make sure that the project is still going on after the 3 days. The notice of cancellation is not required strictly to conform the exact wording in the original contract or to the notice of cancellation form supplied to the buyer by the seller. It is effective if it merely indicates the intention of the buyer not to be bound by the contract or offer. So here's the thing. They don't have to give you the notice of cancellation form. They don't have to have the exact form in order to cancel. They literally, all they can do, handwritten, hey, contractor, thank you very much for your time. I want to cancel. I don't want to do this project anymore. So they don't have to jump through hoops to cancel this contract, you guys. They can give you something handwritten. They can mail it to you. They could give it to you personally. They don't have to jump through hoops to cancel. All they have to do is merely indicate to you that they want to cancel within the 3 days, and they can. Additional restrictions apply to contracts signed during a formally declared state of emergency or local emergency after a major disaster. Think about the fires that happen in LA County all the time. For example, if for whatever reason a house burns down due to a fire, they contact you to rebuild their home. They don't have 3 days to cancel. They would have 7 days to cancel, because in that period, they're in a state of emergency or local emergency. Normally, LA puts out a state of emergency, a local emergency, or the state of California puts that out as well. For example, it is illegal for a contractor to raise prices more than 10% for 180 days following an emergency declaration, which means you can raise your prices 9%, right? You can raise your prices 10%, but if you raise it 11%, then it would become illegal. So you cannot raise your prices more than 10% because now you would be guilty of price gouging. If you are guilty of price gouging, that is punishable up to 1 year in jail and or a $10,000 fine, and the CSLB can suspend or revoke your license. Here's a heads up. Normally when they ask this question, they tell you what is the maximum penalty that they can give you. The maximum penalty for price gouging is 1 year in jail, 1 year in jail, a $10,000 fine, and the CSLB can suspend or revoke the license. So the maximum penalty is all three, not just one. In addition, after an emergency declaration, a buyer has the right to cancel a home solicitation contract or offer for repair or restoration of residential premises until midnight of the 7th business day after the agreement or offer was signed. So again, if for whatever reason the contract was signed in a local or state emergency, for example, the fires that always happen in LA, houses get burned, they contact you to rebuild those homes, the buyer does not have 3 days to cancel. They would have 7 days to cancel. So when they use terms like the buyer, they're talking about the client because they're buying the services from you. They would have 7 days to cancel, not 3 days in a local or state emergency. All right, guys, so now let's go ahead and do a recap. We're going to discuss the differences between the home improvement and the home solicitation. Okay, guys, so here is a cheat sheet, something to help you understand the differences between the home improvement and the home solicitation. So number 1 through number 8 on both sides, that's the information that we cover in chapter 2, page 7. So that information is the same. But number 9 on the home improvement side is in red. Let's go ahead and read that. It says, if the contract is signed inside of the contractor's normal place of business, for example, the office, the 3-day right to cancel does not have to be given. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys where to find this information. Of course, it is in your law book, but I'm also going to show you the website of the Department of Consumer Affairs so you guys can verify that information there as well. Now, let's talk about some of the differences. Remember, in the home solicitation contract and the home improvement, they're both confused with another. The reason for that is because many home improvement contracts are also home solicitation contracts, right? We covered that. So let's say, for example, you have a home improvement contract. You take it to the client's house to sign it there. Then you have to be aware that everything we're going to discuss right now from number 9 to number 15 will apply. So for example, if the contract is signed anywhere but the contractor's normal place of business, the client has 3 days to cancel. Okay? So if it's signed anywhere but the office, now your client has 3 days to cancel. Number 10, the day the contract is signed does not count. We covered that. For example, if the contract was signed on Monday, Tuesday would be the first day that is counting towards the 3 days. Number 11, refund deposits or down payments within 10 days. So you have to refund deposits or down payments within the 10 days. And you have to pick up any materials that were delivered to the property within 20 days. If you do not pick up those materials within the 20 days, the client can actually keep those materials. Number 13, Sundays and business holidays do not count. See page 19, second paragraph. We discussed that already. And then number 14, client can waive the right to cancel in an emergency only, which means you can't tell your clients, just waive your right to cancel, just waive your right to cancel. That's going to look really bad on your part, so please don't do that. They can only waive the right to cancel in an emergency, and of course we showed you the documents in which they have to sign it, they have to date it, they have to describe the emergency and why you have to start the project right away. Now, this is new. Guys, this has just been approved within the last 2 months. If the owner is 65 and older, they actually have 5 days to cancel. Okay, so keep this in mind. Owners that are 65 and older, buyers, clients, your clients, if they are 65 and older, they don't have 3 days to cancel. They have 5 days. So make sure you guys notate this. This is new information. I put it in the notes a couple of months back, but I really wanted to re-record this class and just really tell you guys, owners, buyers, your clients, 65 and older, have 5 days to cancel, not 3 days anymore. So they have 5 days if they're 65 and older. Okay, so hopefully that recap helped you. We're still on page 20, where it says the Truth in Lending Act. So let's go ahead and read that very first sentence, and I want you to highlight that very first sentence where it says, the Truth in Lending Act of 1968 is a federal law that, among other things, defines a homeowner's right to cancel a contract within 3 business days if the contract requires a security interest, a lien, in the real property. Okay, so what I want you guys to do is just pretty much just remember the definition. Remember the definition of when the Truth in Lending Act will apply. It pretty much applies when it's possible that a security interest can be applied on their real property. Now, when they say the term security interest, they are referring to a mechanic's lien. I know we haven't discussed the mechanic's lien just yet, but we will discuss that in chapter 3. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and move forward to chapter 2, page 22, and we're going to discuss the service and repair contracts. So remember, the service and repair contract is totally different from the home improvement and home solicitation. So you have to realize that this is a totally different contract. I'm going to put one up right here on the screen for you guys, and let's go ahead and discuss the service and repair contract. A service and repair contract is an agreement between a contractor who is licensed or required to be licensed and a homeowner or tenant for the performance of home improvement that meets all of the following conditions. Now, in order for it to be a home improvement contract, it has to meet these 4 bullet points. And if you read the last sentence, under the last bullet point, it states, if even one of the above conditions is not met, the contract is considered a home improvement contract. Guys, so even if one of these bullet points is not met, it is not a service and repair. You would have to do a home improvement. Okay, so let's read the first bullet point. The contract price is $750 or less. Now, this does include labor and material. So in order for it to be considered a service and repair contract, it cannot exceed $750. This includes labor and material. The prospective buyer initiated contact with a contractor to request the work, which means the client initially contacted you first. You didn't get the number from a friend and you called them, hey, you need some work done. No, the client texted you, emailed you, called you in some sort of way to initiate contact. The contractor does not sell the buyer goods or services beyond those reasonably necessary to take care of the particular problem. So you're not upselling the customer here. If the customer asked you to repair their air conditioning, you are focusing on the air conditioning only. The customer asked you, hey, there's a plumbing problem. You're not over here trying to paint their bedroom, right? Only offer services to fix the particular problem in which they called you for. If the client wants more work, awesome, go ahead and do that, but don't sign this contract. Do the home improvement if you have the license to do multiple trades. No payment is due or accepted by the contractor until the work is complete. There's no deposit here. There's no down payment here. There's no payment until you finish the entire job. So when you think about service and repair, guys, I want you to think about quick work, couple of hours, you're in and you're out. Service and repair, quick service, quick repair, you're in, you're out. This is not a 1-week contract. You're not building an addition here with the service and repair. A lot of HVAC technicians do service and repair. They go, they check the AC unit. It just needs a little bit more Freon, some more chemicals, whatever the case is. They're in, they're out. Service and repair will apply to any trade as long as it meets these 4 bullet points. Going to page 23. The second bullet point, go ahead and highlight that in full, where it says a service and repair contract must include the statement, the law requires that the contractor offer you any parts that were replaced during the service call. If you do not want the parts, initial the checkbox labeled OK for the contractor to take replaced parts. So for example, if the contractor came, they inspected your AC unit, they changed out the motor in the AC, the fan in the AC unit, they have to offer you that part back. You have to offer that replaced part back to the client. You can't just take it. If the client doesn't want it, they're going to initial it. If they do want it, then they keep it. Also, the last 2 bullet points on page 23, it says the right to cancel a service and repair contract ends when work begins. Another key point, once you sign the contract, you have to start the work. If you don't start the work in some sort of way, you go to Home Depot to buy materials, you come back, hey, you know what, I don't want the job anymore. They can still cancel the contract because you did not start the work. You have to start the work to make sure the client cannot cancel the contract anymore. A service and repair contract must include or have attached a notice in 12-point boldface type near where the parties signed the contract. Okay, guys, so it's really important that you guys put that part of the cancellation in the contract. Like I stated, there should be a contract here that you can review. That way you guys can see an example of the service and repair. Because I don't believe in your book you don't have an example of it, so I'm going to put an example here. Okay, you guys, now we're going to go ahead and move forward to Chapter 2, page 25. Chapter 2, page 25. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and focus on that very first paragraph where it says, for construction defects, a homeowner may file suit up to 4 years for patent defects and 10 years for latent defects. So patent defects are basically non-structural trades, flooring, painting, landscaping, things that don't require permits to do the job. If it's 10 years, that means it's structural, it's not seen with the naked eye, which means that you're looking at framing, electrical, plumbing, things of that nature. So they can file suit up to 4 years for patent non-structural work, 10 years for latent structural work. Now, where it says fit and finish requirements, that very first paragraph, what I do want you guys to do is highlight the last 3 paragraphs in full. Everything in these paragraphs is important. Go ahead and highlight them. Under the general subject of consumer protection for defects and new construction of single-family dwellings, the Civil Code requires a contractor to provide a homeowner with an express limited warranty for at least 1 year covering the fit and finish of the following building components: cabinets, mirrors, flooring, interior and exterior walls, countertops, paint finishes, and trim. A 1-year warranty is automatically created for the components by law, even if the contractor does not provide a written warranty. So even if you don't provide a warranty, the client automatically has 1 year. A contractor may, but is not required to, offer greater or longer protection in the contract with a home buyer, known as enhanced protection agreement. To submit a claim for service and repair of a defect in a fit and finish items, a homeowner may use the normal consumer service procedures agreed to by the client and the contractor, but a homeowner must notify the contractor of the defect in writing by certified mail, overnight mail, or personal delivery before they may file an action in court. Email and faxes are not sufficient. So basically what that last paragraph is telling you is if the client is contacting you, hey, I want to activate a warranty, something's going wrong, they need to notify you first by mail. So if they're calling you and texting you, pick up the damn phone, right? Make sure that you're taking care of your clients. But for whatever reason, you're not answering, before they can actually submit a lawsuit towards you, they do have to notify you by mail. So must notify the contractor of defects in writing by certified mail, overnight mail, or personal delivery. So they do have to give you a handwritten notice, either by overnight mail, certified mail, or they can give it to you directly in person. All right, guys, if you guys go to page 27, that is in regards to public works. We talk about public works in chapter 4, so we're not going to talk about that in this chapter. In this chapter, I really need you guys to focus on the clauses. We talked about so many clauses here, so make sure you're studying, check your notes, review your notes, and please study this class multiple times until you understand it. Remember, it's not a race. It's not how fast you can watch this class. It's how well you can retain the information. Thank you guys very much.